There's a quiet moment that doesn't feel important when it happens. It doesn't come with relief or clarity or any sense that something has shifted. It just shows up as the absence of pressure. I didn't notice it at first. There was no thought that said, "This is it." No inner voice marking a transition. It was more like realizing I wasn't bracing for anything anymore. For a long time, even rest carried weight. Even stillness felt like it needed to be useful. There was always a sense that something unseen was waiting. Some understanding, some resolution, some version of myself I hadn't reached yet. And then one day, without warning, that sense wasn't there. Not replaced, not resolved, just gone. Life didn't feel complete, but it also didn't feel incomplete. That distinction matters more than it sounds like it should. I still woke up tired, still moved through the day slowly, still forgot why I walked into a room sometimes. But underneath all of it, there was no background urgency asking me to become something else. No sense that I was behind my own life. I didn't trust it at first. I kept checking for the familiar tension, like someone tapping a pocket to make sure their keys are still there. But there was nothing to check against. Nothing felt wrong, not good, not elevated, just neutral in a way that felt unfamiliar. It took time to realize how much energy had been spent living in reference to a missing piece. Even when things were going well, there was always an invisible comparison happening. A subtle measuring of how this moment stacked up against something better, deeper, or more meaningful. That comparison had been so constant it felt like part of perception itself. And now it wasn't there. Days continued to happen. They still blurred together sometimes. Some passed without leaving much of a trace. But there was no judgment attached to that. A day didn't need to justify itself anymore. I noticed how often I used to interpret stillness as stagnation, how quiet moments felt suspicious, like they were signs of avoidance or decline. Now they just felt like moments, nothing more, nothing less. There's something disorienting about realizing that life doesn't need to feel meaningful in order to be real. That meaning isn't something that arrives. It's something we assign when we're trying to anchor ourselves. Without that need, things don't disappear. They soften. I still care about people, still respond when something needs attention, still get frustrated when things don't work. But none of it feels like evidence of a deeper problem. It's just life behaving like life. There's no sense that I need to be more present than I already am. No internal reminder to stay aware. No fear of slipping back into something. Awareness isn't something I'm holding anymore. It's just there, the way gravity is there, unremarkable until you try to leave it. Sometimes I catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the return of urgency, for the voice that used to say, "You're missing something important," but it doesn't come. And when it doesn't come, I don't celebrate. I don't mark progress. I don't feel accomplished. I just keep living. There's a strange humility in realizing how much effort went into trying to feel whole. How many internal strategies existed just to manage the sense of lack. Even the search for awareness had weight to it. A subtle hope that seeing clearly would finally quiet something. But clarity wasn't what did it. Letting go did. Not intentionally, not decisively. It just happened when the need to fix myself ran out of energy. There are days now that don't go anywhere. They start and end without narrative. No lesson, no takeaway, and nothing about them feels wasted. I used to believe that if a day didn't change me, it failed in some way. That growth had to be continuous to be real. Now growth feels like the wrong word entirely. Things change, yes, but not in a way that needs tracking. I don't feel closer to anything. I don't feel farther away. There's no internal map anymore. And without the map, there's no sense of being lost. That's the part that's hardest to explain. How direction can disappear without confusion replacing it. How the absence of striving doesn't create emptiness, it creates space. Not a dramatic space, not an expansive one. Just enough room to breathe without checking if I'm doing it right. The mind still speaks sometimes. It still offers opinions. It still reacts. But it doesn't feel like the center of things. It feels like weather passing through. There's no need to quiet it. No need to follow it. It doesn't carry authority anymore. I didn't take that authority away. I just stopped believing it needed to run the show. That belief faded quietly, the way old habits do when they're no longer fed. There's a gentleness to life now that I didn't expect. Not because things are easier, but because nothing feels personal in the same way. Challenges still happen, but they don't echo into identity. They don't turn into questions about who I am or where I'm going. They're just situations asking for a response. And once the response is given, they dissolve back into the flow of things. I used to think peace would feel like resolution, like a final answer settling into place. But peace feels more like the absence of interrogation. Life no longer asks me to explain myself. I don't have to make sense of why I'm here. I don't have to justify how I spend my time. Existence doesn't require a thesis. There's something profoundly ordinary about that realization. And that ordinariness is the relief. Nothing is missing, not because everything is here, but because nothing needs to be added for this moment to stand on its own. That doesn't mean joy is constant. It isn't. It doesn't mean sadness disappears. It doesn't. It just means neither of them feel like signals pointing somewhere else. They're part of the texture of being alive. Sometimes I remember how desperately I wanted to arrive somewhere different, how convinced I was that understanding would finally let me rest. And I feel compassion for that version of myself. Not because they were wrong, but because they were tired. The search wasn't foolish. It was honest, but it reached its natural end when it stopped being necessary. Not everything needs to be finished. That's something I'm still learning how to live with. There are moments when I expect the old narrative to return, when I assume this quiet is temporary. But even that expectation doesn't carry fear anymore. If something changes, it changes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Life doesn't need my supervision. There's a deep trust forming, not in outcomes, but in the simplicity of experience, that whatever shows up will be lived. And that's enough. I don't feel like someone who's arrived. I feel like someone who stopped running. The path didn't end. It just stopped demanding attention. And in that space, life continues, unfinished, unremarkable, and entirely sufficient as it is. Nothing is missing. And because of that, there's nothing I need to find. If this reflection met you where you are, you're already part of this space. You don't need to hold on to it, and you don't need to return. But if you do, these reflections will still be here.